A struggling farmer finds an injured pilot in his field, only to learn she's a millionaire. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. On a cold autumn afternoon, in a small rural town in Kansas, the life of a struggling farmer was about to change forever. Jack Turner was a man of the land, his hands calloused from years of hard work, his face weathered from the Sunday. For years, his farm had been barely scraping by. With crops failing and the bills piling up, Jack was starting to lose hope. His wife had passed away several years ago, and now he was left alone, trying to make ends meet while taking care of the farm his family had owned for generations. As he walked through the fields, Jack's mind was preoccupied with the harsh realities of farm life. The harvest was coming, but he knew there was no way he would make enough money this season to pay off the debts hanging over his head. The weight of it all was crushing. Suddenly, as he walked past a row of tall corn stalks, he noticed something out of place. There, lying in the dirt, was a woman. She was unconscious, her clothes torn and covered in dirt. Jack rushed to her side, his heart pounding. As he knelt down to check for a pulse, he realized she was still breathing, but just barely. Without a second thought, Jack lifted her into his arms and carried her back to his farmhouse. The sun was beginning to set as he laid her gently on his worn-out couch. He grabbed a damp cloth and wiped the dirt from her face, trying to wake her up. When she finally stirred, her eyes fluttered open, filled with confusion and fear. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice weak. Jack, still out of breath from carrying her, reassured her. "You're safe. You were found in my field. You passed out. What happened?" The woman's brow furrowed as if trying to remember. I'm not sure. My plane crashed. I was flying. Then everything went dark," she replied. Jack's eyes widened. He knew there was a small airfield nearby, but he had no idea a plane had crashed. As she spoke, her eyes locked onto his. There was something in them that made him feel uneasy. Something about her seemed out of place in his world of dirt roads and faded barns. "I'm Jack Turner," he said, trying to sound calm. "I'm going to get you some water. Just rest, all right?" She nodded, closing her eyes again, exhaustion overwhelming her. As Jack went to fetch some water, he couldn't help but wonder who she was. She didn't look like she was from around here, and her clothes, though dirty, were expensive. Little did Jack know, the woman lying on his couch was not just any random stranger. She was about to turn his life upside down in ways he could never have imagined. Asterisk. A struggling farmer finds an injured pilot in his field, only to learn she's a millionaire. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue where we left off. The next morning, Jack Turner was up before dawn, a habit he had never been able to break. The weight of the world felt especially heavy that day. He had spent most of the night sitting by the couch where he had laid the injured woman, keeping an eye on her as she slept fitfully. Her name, he had learned, was Grace Evans. When she finally woke, her memory was foggy, but she seemed to be slowly piecing things together. Jack had patched up the gash on her forehead and made her comfortable. "How are you feeling?" Jack asked, offering her a glass of water. Grace looked up at him, her eyes still clouded with confusion. "Better," she murmured. "But where am I? What happened?" Jack sat beside her, watching her carefully. "You crashed your plane. I found you in my field. You're safe now." Grace's eyes widened. "My plane? I remember. I was flying, then everything just went black. I didn't know where I was. Thank you for saving me." She said it so softly, but Jack could hear the sincerity in her voice. He nodded. "I couldn't just leave you out there." As Grace sat up, she winced, clearly still in pain. Jack noticed the way she carried herself. She wasn't like the people in town. She didn't have the rough edges or the weathered hands of someone who worked the land. Grace's clothes were high-end, too clean for someone who had just crashed in the middle of a field. "You don't look like you're from around here," Jack said, studying her. "I'm not," she replied, her voice a little steadier now. "I was on my way to visit family, but the plane went down. I didn't expect to land in a place like this." Jack frowned, sensing a hidden truth. "Family?" "Yes," she said, her gaze drifting away for a moment. "I have a business in the city. Or I did. I'm not exactly from here." She trailed off, but Jack didn't press her. There was something about her that intrigued him, but he had learned long ago not to ask too many questions. "I'll get you to a hospital as soon as possible," he said, trying to keep things simple. "You've been through a lot, and I'm sure you need proper care." Grace shook her head slowly. "No hospital. I'm fine, really. I just need to figure out what happened and how I can get back on track. I'm not the kind of person who needs pity." Jack didn't know how to respond to that. Grace was unlike anyone he had ever met. She seemed strong, even in her vulnerable state. But he also sensed that there was something more going on beneath the surface. As Jack made her a light breakfast, they sat in silence. He didn't want to ask too many questions. And she didn't offer any more details about her life. However, after a while, Grace spoke again, her tone a little softer. "You saved my life, and I can't thank you enough," she said. "But I don't want to be a burden on you. I'll figure out a way to repay you." Jack didn't respond immediately. He didn't need repayment. It wasn't about that. But he wasn't sure how to say that without sounding condescending. "Don't worry about it," he said finally. "I'm just glad you're okay." As the day wore on, Jack couldn't help but feel a strange pull toward Grace. Despite their differences, despite the world she came from, she was a person in need of help, and that's all that mattered to him. Little did Jack know, the kindness he showed her would lead to a turn of events that would change both their lives forever. Grace, with all her wealth and status, was not just any stranger. She had a past that Jack could never have imagined, and as much as she tried to avoid it, that past was about to catch up with her in ways she hadn't prepared for. Asterisk. A struggling farmer finds an injured pilot in his field only to learn she's a millionaire. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue where we left off. A few days passed since Grace Evans, the injured pilot, had been rescued by Jack Turner. She had stayed in the small farmhouse, recovering and gradually regaining her strength. Jack had been taking care of her, but a lingering sense of mystery still surrounded her. She was not like the other women Jack had met in his lifetime. Her manners, her speech, even the way she carried herself were different. Despite this, there was something undeniably familiar about her, as though Jack had met her in another life, in a world that seemed far removed from his daily struggles on the farm. Grace had been quiet about her past. Whenever Jack asked questions, she would change the subject, shifting the conversation to something safer, like the weather or her recovery. She was always polite but distant. One morning, as the sun began to rise, Jack was out in the field, tending to the crops. The ground had been dry, and it seemed like the drought would continue to threaten his farm. He hadn't had time to worry about the long-term effects yet, but it was getting harder to ignore. He wiped the sweat from his brow and wiped his hands on his jeans. As he walked back toward the house, he noticed Grace standing by the window, staring out toward the horizon. There was something different about the way she was looking at the fields. "You look like you're deep in thought," Jack remarked as he approached the door. Grace turned to him and offered a small smile. "I am. I've been thinking about what comes next." Jack raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" She hesitated before replying, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I can't go back to my old life? What if I never see my family again?" Jack was taken aback by her sudden vulnerability. He had expected her to remain aloof, but there was a quiet sadness in her eyes that struck a chord with him. "What happened? Why can't you go back?" Grace looked away, her gaze wandering across the room. It's complicated, she said softly. I've made some decisions that, well, let's just say they were not the best. And now, I'm not sure what to do. Jack could sense that she was not ready to open up fully, but her words stuck with him. You're safe here, he said gently. Take the time you need. Grace nodded, and for the rest of the day there was an unspoken understanding between them. That evening, as they sat together for dinner, Grace spoke up again, this time with more resolve in her voice. I've been thinking, Jack. I need to make some changes in my life. I can't keep running away from everything. Jack set down his fork and looked at her intently. What kind of changes? Grace paused before answering. I need to get back to work. I can't live like this forever. I want to help you with the farm, if you'll let me. I know it's not much, but it's a start. Jack was taken aback by her offer. He had never expected someone like her, someone so wealthy, to want to get involved with his humble life. But something in her voice told him that this wasn't just a fleeting idea, she was serious. You're welcome to stay as long as you need, Jack replied, his voice steady. But are you sure this is what you want? Grace nodded. I don't want to be just a visitor here anymore. I want to contribute, to help. I know my skills might be different from yours, but maybe there's something I can offer. Jack studied her for a moment, his mind racing with the possibilities. He had always done everything by himself, fixing fences, planting crops, dealing with the unpredictable weather. He had never let anyone help him, but Grace was different. She wasn't asking for anything in return. She just wanted to help. And that, he realized, was something he hadn't felt in a long time. Trust. Over the next few days, Grace became more involved in the farm's work. She didn't shy away from the physical labor, even though Jack had expected her to. She started learning the basics, feeding the animals, helping with the gardening, and even lending a hand when Jack had to repair the barn roof. It was clear she had a sharp mind, and as they worked side by side, Jack found himself impressed by her determination. But despite the hard work, something was still missing. Grace had a way of keeping her distance emotionally, as though she was still holding on to something from her past that she couldn't shake off. Jack didn't press her. He respected her need for space. However, there was no denying that their bond was growing stronger. They were no longer strangers. They were becoming partners in a way that neither of them had expected. As the days turned into weeks, Jack realized that Grace wasn't just helping him on the farm, she was changing the way he saw the world. She had brought new life to his tired, worn-out existence. And though he didn't fully understand her past, Jack knew one thing for certain. He would never forget the day he found her in his field. It had been the start of something that neither of them could have predicted. Asterisk. A struggling farmer finds an injured pilot in his field, only to learn she's a millionaire. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue where we left off. As the days went on, Jack and Grace's lives intertwined more deeply. Grace had become a constant presence on the farm, and Jack had grown to rely on her in ways he hadn't expected. It wasn't just about the work anymore, it was the conversations they shared, the quiet moments when the two of them would sit on the porch at sunset, watching the sky turn a soft shade of orange. But despite all of this, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that Grace was still holding something back. She had begun to open up more, but there were times when her past seemed to haunt her in ways she couldn't explain. One evening, as they were finishing up in the garden, Jack decided to ask her again about her life before the crash. He had been patient, giving her the space to reveal what she wanted, but something in him told him that she was ready to share the truth. Grace, he said softly, glancing over at her. I know you're not from around here. You've been quiet about your life. But you don't have to keep hiding it from me. If you want to talk, I'm here. Grace paused, wiping the sweat from her forehead as she looked at Jack. Her eyes were searching, as though deciding whether to let her guard down. I don't know where to start, she said after a long silence. The life I had, it feels so far away now. Jack watched her carefully, his heart heavy with empathy. You don't have to explain it all at once, he said. "But if it helps, I'm ready to listen." Grace took a deep breath and looked out at the fields, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was the head of a big company. My family. We built it from the ground up. I was supposed to take over after my father. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of everything. I got caught up in the power, the money, and the control. I made decisions that hurt people I cared about." Jack listened, not interrupting, letting her words wash over him. "I thought I could handle it all, but then the crash happened. It was like the universe was giving me a wake-up call. Everything I built, it didn't matter. I was just a person, stuck in a life that I wasn't even sure I wanted anymore." There was a long silence between them. Grace's shoulders trembled slightly, and Jack felt an overwhelming urge to reach out to her. But he held back. "I don't know who I am anymore, Jack. I thought I was doing what I was supposed to do, but now I'm not so sure," Grace continued, her voice breaking. "I thought that by running away, I could start over, but everything still feels broken." Jack walked over to her and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to figure it all out right now," he said. "You're here now, and that's enough. You're not alone anymore." Grace looked up at him, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "But what if I'm too far gone?" she whispered. "What if I can never go back?" Jack shook his head, his voice firm but gentle. "You don't need to go back. You just need to keep moving forward, one step at a time. You're already doing it. You've already made the hardest choice, choosing to start again." Grace gave him a small, uncertain smile, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of hope. She didn't have all the answers, and she wasn't sure what the future would hold. But for the first time since the crash, she felt like she might just be able to find herself again. The days that followed brought more healing, both for Grace and for Jack. As the summer stretched on, their bond grew stronger, and they began to rely on each other more. Grace started to take on more responsibility at the farm, using her business skills to help with budgeting and organizing the farm's finances. Jack, in turn, opened up more about his own struggles, his grief over losing his wife, the pressure of keeping the farm running, and the loneliness that came with it all. As they shared their stories, they realized just how much they had in common. They were both searching for something: Grace, for redemption, and Jack, for a sense of purpose. Together, they started to build something that neither of them had expected. A life that was no longer defined by the past, but by the possibilities of the future. But even as things began to change, Grace knew that her past would always be with her. The secrets she had buried deep inside would eventually have to come to light. And as much as she wanted to move forward, she couldn't help but wonder if the truth would tear apart the fragile life she and Jack were building. Little did Grace know, the choices she made now would have consequences far beyond what either of them could imagine. Asterisk. A struggling farmer finds an injured pilot in his field only to learn she's a millionaire. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue where we left off. A few weeks passed, and the bond between Jack and Grace only grew stronger. They worked together on the farm every day, the rhythm of their lives becoming more intertwined. Jack had never expected to find someone like Grace, someone so different from the people in his small town, but someone who, despite everything, shared in his struggles and his hopes. But Grace's past, which she had barely spoken of, was still there, lurking beneath the surface. It was something she couldn't escape, no matter how much she tried to bury it. Jack could see the tension in her eyes, the moments when she would freeze at certain words or when she seemed lost in her own thoughts. He knew that sooner or later, the truth would come out. It was only a matter of time. One evening, after they had finished working for the day, Jack decided to take the risk and bring up the subject again. They were sitting on the porch, the sun setting in the distance, casting a golden glow over the fields. The quiet was comfortable, but Jack could sense the unease in Grace. He cleared his throat, his voice steady but filled with concern. "Grace, I know you've been through a lot, and I know it's hard to talk about the past, but it's starting to weigh on you. If you're ready, I'm here to listen." Grace looked up at him, her face softening. She had come to trust Jack more than she had ever trusted anyone else in her life. But this was different. This was the part of her story that she had kept hidden for so long. She hesitated, her hands trembling slightly in her lap. "Jack," she started, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know where to begin." Jack leaned forward, his eyes full of understanding. "You don't have to explain everything all at once. Just tell me what's on your mind." Grace took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "The company I ran. It wasn't just a business. It was my family's legacy. But I made mistakes. Big ones. I let my pride get in the way of everything. I hurt people. People who trusted me. People who depended on me. And when the company started to fall apart, I ran. I couldn't face what I had done. I thought if I just left, everything would go away. But it didn't. It just followed me here." Jack listened intently, his heart aching for her. "What happened to the company?" he asked gently. Grace swallowed hard, fighting back the tears. "It's gone. My father passed away, and my brother he took over. But then the board took control, and everything spiraled. I made decisions that I thought were right at the time, but now I know they were all wrong. I betrayed people who believed in me, and now I'm here, hiding, running." Jack's heart went out to her. He could hear the guilt in her voice, the weight of it pressing down on her. He didn't know what to say. What could he say? But he knew one thing for certain: Grace wasn't the person she thought she was. She was more than the mistakes she had made. "Grace," Jack said softly, "you're not running anymore. You're here. You've made a choice to stay, to help. That's something." Grace looked at him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of judgment, but all she saw was kindness. "I don't know if I can fix everything I've broken," she whispered, "but I want to try. I want to make things right. I can't go back, but maybe I can move forward. Maybe I can find a way to make up for what I've done." Jack reached out and placed a hand on hers, his touch warm and reassuring. "You don't have to fix everything at once. Just take it one step at a time. You've already made the first step. You're here, and you're making a difference. That's all anyone can ask for." Grace felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had been running for so long, hiding from the truth, from herself. But here, with Jack, she finally felt like she was ready to face what had been holding her back. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had a chance to build something real. As the days passed, Grace continued to help Jack on the farm, and slowly but surely, she began to rebuild her life. She used her skills to help organize the farm's finances, and she started to feel like she was contributing to something that mattered. Jack, too, felt the weight of his own burdens lifting as he began to trust her more and more. They had become partners in a way that neither of them had expected, and they began to rely on each other in ways that were both surprising and comforting. But Grace knew that the past wasn't finished with her yet. She had run from it for so long, but now it was starting to catch up with her. Little did Grace know, the truth about her past was about to come crashing down in a way that neither she nor Jack could have ever imagined. Asterisk. A struggling farmer finds an injured pilot in his field only to learn she's a millionaire. Asterisk. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue where we left off. Weeks passed, and the bond between Jack and Grace continued to grow stronger. They had become an unlikely pair: Jack, the humble farmer who had spent his life working the land, and Grace, the once powerful businesswoman who had run from her past. Every day, they worked together on the farm, each learning from the other, sharing stories, and slowly building a life they hadn't expected. Jack had never imagined that one day, someone like Grace would walk into his life. And Grace, despite her struggles with guilt and the weight of her past, had found a sense of peace in the simplicity of Jack's world. But as their relationship deepened, Grace couldn't shake the feeling that her past was always lurking, waiting to catch up with her. She had been hiding for so long, but sooner or later, the truth was bound to surface. One day, as Jack and Grace were in the barn working on repairs, a car pulled up to the driveway. Grace paused, her heart skipping a beat. She recognized the car immediately. It was a sleek, black vehicle she had seen many times before. Her heart raced as she turned to Jack. "I think someone is here to see me," she said, her voice tight. Jack looked over, noticing the tension in her face. "Who is it?" he asked, sensing her unease. Grace took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "It's my brother," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's come looking for me." Jack watched her, unsure of what to say. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked. Grace shook her head. "No, you don't need to be part of this. This is something I have to face on my own." Jack nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. He watched as Grace walked toward the car, her steps hesitant. As she approached the car, her brother, Nathan, stepped out. He was tall, well-dressed, and exuded the same air of authority that Grace once had. He looked at her with a mix of surprise and disbelief. "Grace," Nathan said, his voice cold. "I can't believe it's really you." Grace stood there, her heart pounding in her chest. "Nathan, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't face you after everything that happened." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "You think you can just run away and hide from your responsibilities? You left everything behind: our family, the company, the people who relied on us. And now you're here, living on a farm, pretending to be someone else." Grace's throat tightened, but she didn't back down. "I didn't run, Nathan. I was lost. I couldn't keep going down that path. I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to make things right." Nathan's expression hardened. "You can't just erase what you did. The company's a mess, Grace. We're losing everything, and now you show up like nothing happened? You owe us, you owe me, and you owe everyone who believed in you." Grace took a deep breath, her eyes locked with his. "I know I can't fix everything, but I'm here now. I'm not the same person I was, and I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers. But I'm trying." Nathan scoffed, shaking his head. "Trying? That's not enough. You can't just walk away from everything and think you'll find peace here." Jack stood at the barn door, watching the confrontation unfold. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of Grace's past crashing down on her in that moment. He knew that Grace was strong, but he also knew how deeply her brother's words cut. As Nathan continued to berate her, Grace's shoulders slumped. She felt small again, like the person she had been before. Everything fell apart. Jack couldn't stay silent any longer. He walked over to where Grace and Nathan stood, his presence strong and steady. "That's enough," Jack said firmly, his voice calm but resolute. Nathan turned to him, surprised by his interruption. "Who are you to tell me what's enough?" he snapped. "I'm the one who's been here, helping her," Jack replied, his eyes steady. "I'm the one who's seen Grace work day in and day out, trying to rebuild herself. You don't get to come here and tear her down." Nathan's eyes flashed with anger, but Jack didn't flinch. "This is my farm, Nathan, and I don't care about the company or the past. Grace is here, and that's all that matters." Grace looked at Jack, her heart swelling with gratitude. For the first time in weeks, she felt like someone truly understood her, like she wasn't alone in this fight. Nathan opened his mouth to argue, but then seemed to reconsider. He looked at Grace one last time, his expression unreadable. "You think you can fix this? Fine. But don't expect me to be here when it falls apart." With that, he turned and walked back to his car, leaving Grace standing there, a mix of relief and fear washing over her. Jack stepped up beside her, his presence grounding her. "You don't have to face that alone," he said softly. Grace nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know, and I'm not running anymore." As the car drove away, Grace stood there for a moment, breathing in the fresh air. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had taken a step toward reclaiming her life. The past might have followed her, but it didn't have to define her. And with Jack by her side, she knew she had a chance to move forward, no matter what came next. Asterisk. A struggling farmer finds an injured pilot in his field only to learn she's a millionaire. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue where we left off. Grace had expected her brother Nathan's visit to weigh heavily on her, but as the days passed, she felt an unexpected lightness. Jack's unwavering support had given her the courage to face her past. And while Nathan's harsh words still stung, they didn't define her anymore. She had spent the last few years running from the weight of her decisions, but now, surrounded by Jack and the simplicity of farm life, she felt a new sense of direction. However, Grace knew that the hardest part of her journey was yet to come. Despite Jack's kindness and the hard work they shared together, her past, her family, the company was still a looming shadow. One morning, while they were having breakfast in the kitchen, Grace's phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Hesitant, she answered. "Grace?" the voice on the other end said, and for a moment, she froze. It was a voice she had hoped never to hear again. "It's Claire," the woman on the other end said, her tone professional, almost cold. "We need to talk about the company. There are matters that need your attention." Grace's heart sank. Claire was her old assistant, the one person she had trusted completely before everything fell apart. She had helped Grace manage the company before Grace decided to step away. But now, Claire was calling with a reminder of the responsibilities that Grace had left behind. "I'm not interested," Grace said firmly, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm not coming back." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Claire spoke again. "Grace, you don't have a choice. The board's been pushing for your return. We can't keep the company running without your involvement. You're still listed as the CEO, and they won't let go until you step back in." Grace's chest tightened. She had wanted to leave that world behind for so long, but it was clear now that it wasn't going to let her go so easily. She glanced at Jack, who was sitting across the table, his eyes watching her closely, sensing the shift in her mood. "You've already run away once," Claire continued, her voice softening just a little. "You can't keep hiding forever." Grace's mind raced. She didn't want to go back to that life, but she knew Claire was right. The company was still hers. Or at least, it had been. She had left it in ruins, but it was clear that without her, it wouldn't survive. Jack could see the struggle in her face, the conflict between her desire to build a new life and the undeniable responsibilities she still felt toward her family's legacy. He stood up and walked over to her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Grace," he said quietly, "you don't have to do this. You've already made your choice. You're here now. If you go back to that world, it'll just drag you down again. You've found a new purpose here, with the farm." Grace looked up at Jack, his words grounding her. She had known that the decision to leave the company had been difficult, but now, hearing it from Jack, she realized just how much she had gained by staying. She wasn't the same person she had been when she had first come here. Jack had helped her see that. "I can't ignore this forever," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "I know I can't just walk away from everything. But I also can't go back to who I was." Jack squeezed her shoulder gently. "You don't have to go back to who you were," he said. "You can make your own path. You don't need that company to define you." Grace's heart ached as she considered the path ahead. She had spent so long trying to escape the expectations and the demands of the company, her family, and her past. But now, Jack had shown her that she could create something of her own, something she could truly be proud of. It wasn't about the money or the power anymore. It was about finding peace, purpose, and a sense of belonging. "I don't know what to do," she whispered, feeling overwhelmed. Jack smiled softly, his eyes filled with reassurance. "One step at a time," he said. "We'll figure it out together." Grace nodded, a small sense of clarity starting to form. She didn't have to have all the answers right now. She didn't have to go back to that life. And she didn't have to be defined by her past mistakes. But she knew one thing for sure. The life she was building with Jack, the life they were creating together on the farm, was her future. The phone call ended soon after, but Grace felt a sense of calm settle over her. She wasn't ready to face her past fully, but she knew that she didn't have to do it alone. With Jack by her side, she could take the steps she needed to heal and move forward. As the day went on, Grace felt a renewed sense of purpose. She and Jack worked side by side, tending to the farm, and as the sun set that evening, she realized that for the first time in a long time, she was at peace. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in years, Grace felt like she was finally ready to face it on her own terms. Asterisk, asterisk. A struggling farmer finds an injured pilot in his field only to learn she's a millionaire. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue where we left off. Days turned into weeks, and the strain of Grace's past seemed to ease a little as she and Jack settled into a routine. They worked the land, side by side, and for the first time in a long while, Grace felt the weight of her life become a little lighter. But despite the progress they were making, the shadow of the past continued to hover just out of reach. Her brother's words still echoed in her mind, and she knew that no matter how much she had changed, the consequences of her past were never far behind. One morning, as Jack and Grace were working in the fields, Grace's phone rang again. She hesitated, wiping her hands on her jeans before she answered. "Grace?" The voice on the other end was unfamiliar. It was a man's voice, sharp and commanding. "This is Mark Sullivan. I'm calling regarding the assets of your family's company." Grace's heart skipped a beat. Mark Sullivan was one of the lawyers who had been handling the legal side of her family's business after she stepped away. The fact that he was calling now, after all this time, sent a wave of dread washing over her. "I've been trying to reach you for days," Mark continued. "There's an urgent matter we need to address. The board is planning a shareholder meeting next week, and they're pushing for your return as CEO. They believe you are the only one who can stabilize the company." Grace clenched her jaw, her hand tightening around the phone. "I've already told you, Mark, I'm not coming back. I'm not that person anymore." There was a long pause, and Grace could almost hear the frustration on the other end. "Grace, I understand your desire to move on, but the situation is becoming critical. The company is facing major financial losses, and without your leadership, it could collapse. You need to make a decision." Grace felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle back onto her shoulders. She had tried so hard to leave that life behind, but the company's problems weren't just going to disappear. She looked over at Jack, who was tending to the animals nearby, his back turned to her. She knew he couldn't hear her conversation, but the thought of telling him of involving him in this part of her life felt almost impossible. She had already made so many mistakes, and the last thing she wanted was to drag Jack into the mess she had left behind. "I'll think about it," Grace said, her voice quieter now. "But I'm not making any promises." Mark's tone softened, but only slightly. "I understand, but you need to act fast. Time is running out." The call ended, and Grace stood there for a moment, staring at the phone in her hand. Her heart was heavy with indecision. She had spent so much time running away from her past, but now it was clear she couldn't escape it forever. She had responsibilities, people who depended on her, and no matter how much she wanted to move on, those responsibilities were not easily dismissed. Jack had already noticed the change in her. He had seen the way her shoulders had tensed when she was on the phone, the way her smile had faded when the conversation ended. As she walked back toward the barn, Jack turned to face her, his brow furrowing with concern. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice gentle but probing. Grace gave him a tight smile, trying to shake off the weight she was carrying. "Yeah, just some business stuff I need to figure out," she replied, her voice betraying her. Jack didn't press her further, but he could tell that something was off. Grace had always been guarded when it came to her past, but this was different. There was a tension in her that hadn't been there before. "You know you can talk to me about it, right?" Jack said, taking a step closer. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." Grace looked up at him, her heart aching with gratitude. She had grown to trust him in ways she never thought possible, but she couldn't bring herself to burden him with the weight of her past. "It's complicated, Jack," she said, her voice soft. "I wish I could just walk away from it all, but I can't. There are things I have to fix, things I have to make right." Jack reached out and took her hand in his touch warm and reassuring. "You don't have to do it alone," he said. "You've already made the hardest choice starting fresh. You don't have to go back to that world, Grace. You're not that person anymore." Grace squeezed his hand, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. She had spent so much of her life carrying the weight of her family's legacy, but Jack was right. She didn't have to go back to that life. She didn't have to let it define her. "I don't want to go back," Grace whispered, her voice filled with determination. "But I don't know how to fix everything. I don't know how to make up for what I've done." Jack smiled softly, his eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "You don't have to fix everything, Grace. You just have to keep moving forward, one step at a time." Grace nodded, feeling a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in years. She didn't have all the answers, and she didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was on the right path. With Jack by her side, she knew she could face whatever came next. Asterisk, a struggling farmer finds an injured pilot in his field only to learn she's a millionaire. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue where we left off. The days after Grace's conversation with Jack were filled with an uneasy quiet. Grace knew the decision was coming. End of chapter. The call she had received from Mark Sullivan still weighed heavily on her mind. The pressure to return to her family's company, to step back into the role of CEO, had never been more real. The board was pushing for it, and as much as she had hoped to leave all that behind, she couldn't ignore the reality. It wasn't just about money, it was about the people who had worked for her, the employees who were depending on her to fix the company's mess. But at what cost? The more she thought about it, the more she realized she couldn't go back to that life. Not the person she had been, not the mistakes she had made. She had found something here, something real with Jack, something she didn't want to lose. The conflict inside her grew stronger with each passing day. That morning, as they finished their work in the fields, Jack noticed the change in her again. He could see the strain on her face, the way she was lost in her thoughts. He stopped what he was doing and walked over to her. "Grace," he said, his voice gentle. "What's going on? You've been quiet lately. You know you can talk to me, right?" Grace took a deep breath and looked at him. She wanted to confide in him, to tell him everything she was feeling. But the words stuck in her throat. She didn't want to drag him into her mess, especially now that she had come to rely on him so much. But she also knew she couldn't keep it from him any longer. "Jack," she began, her voice shaking slightly, "I've been getting calls about the company. The board wants me back. They need me to step in again." Jack raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "I thought you said you were done with that. You've worked so hard to move on, Grace. Why go back to it?" Grace's heart tightened. "I don't know. I feel like I'm being pulled in two directions. There are people relying on me, Jack. The company, my family's company, it's falling apart. I can't just walk away from it. But I don't want to go back to that life. I don't want to be the person I was before." Jack stood silently for a moment, processing what she had said. He knew how hard it had been for Grace to leave her past behind, but he also knew that going back would only bring her more pain. He reached out, gently touching her arm. "Grace," he said softly, "I know you feel responsible, but you don't have to carry all of this on your own. You've already started a new life, a real life, and it's a life that matters. But if you go back to the company, what's going to happen to this? To us?" Grace looked at him, her eyes filled with confusion and doubt. She had never felt more torn in her life. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know what's right anymore." Jack squeezed her arm, offering her the comfort she so desperately needed. "I don't have all the answers either, Grace. But I know this. Whatever you choose, I'm here. I'm with you." The words brought a sense of peace to her, but also more uncertainty. Could she really walk away from everything she had built, from the life she had known, to start something new? She wasn't sure, but she knew one thing for certain. Jack was right. She couldn't go back to the past. Not without sacrificing the future she was starting to build here. Grace spent the next few days in quiet contemplation. She would often sit alone in the barn, staring at the empty fields, her mind racing with possibilities. The weight of her decision felt suffocating. She could go back to the company, take the reins again, fix everything, but at what cost? Or she could stay here, with Jack, and continue the life they had started to build. It was a life of simplicity, of hard work, but it was hers. One evening, as the sun began to set, Grace stood on the porch, looking out at the horizon. Jack joined her, standing silently by her side. They didn't need to say anything. They both knew what the other was thinking. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Grace spoke. "I can't go back, Jack," she said, her voice steady. "I can't go back to that world. It's not who I am anymore. But I also can't keep running from it. I have to face it, but I'll do it on my terms. I'll help, but I won't go back to being the person I was." Jack smiled softly, his hand finding hers. "You don't have to be that person anymore," he said. "You've already made the hardest choice. You're here, with me, and that's all that matters." Grace nodded, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. She didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had control over it. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't hiding from her past. She was ready to face whatever came next, with Jack by her side. Together, they would figure it out. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. Asterisk, asterisk, a struggling farmer finds an injured pilot in his field only to learn she's a millionaire. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue where we left off. The decision Grace had made, staying with Jack, embracing this new life on the farm, wasn't one she had come to lightly. It wasn't just about stepping away from her old life. It was about fully accepting that she had to let go of the person she used to be. That afternoon, as they worked together in the fields, Grace realized that the weight of her past was still very much there, lingering in the background. She knew it wasn't going to disappear, not just because she chose a different path, but because the ties to her past were not easily severed. While Jack had been nothing but supportive, Grace couldn't help but feel the pull of the unfinished business that still haunted her, especially now that she knew the company was still clinging to the hope that she would return. Over the past few days, the thought had started to consume her. Could she ignore the responsibility she felt? Could she really leave the people who depended on her, even if she didn't want to go back? She wasn't sure. As they took a break, sitting on the porch of the farmhouse, the warm afternoon sun casting long shadows across the yard, Grace's thoughts began to race. Jack, sensing her quiet unease, sat beside her, offering the space she needed without saying a word. He didn't push her to talk, but she knew he was there, ready to listen when she was ready to speak. Grace turned to him after a moment, her voice low but steady. "Jack, I don't know if I can just walk away from all of it," she confessed. Jack's gaze softened, and he reached for her hand. "You don't have to walk away from it all, Grace. But you've already taken a step forward. The past doesn't define you, not anymore. You've built something real here. Something you can be proud of." Grace sighed, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "It's not that simple. The company is falling apart. I know I could help fix it, but I don't want to go back to that world. I can't be the person I was before." Jack nodded slowly. "Then don't be that person. You can still help without going back. You've changed, Grace. You don't have to be the CEO they want you to be. You're more than that." Grace felt a sense of clarity settle over her. She had spent so much time fighting her past, trying to outrun the expectations placed on her. But Jack was right. She had changed, and she didn't have to carry the weight of her past decisions. She could find another way to make a difference. With Jack beside her, the path forward didn't seem as impossible as it had just days before. But even with Jack's support, Grace knew there would be challenges ahead. The company wasn't going to just let her go, not without a fight. And though the thought of returning to that world still filled her with dread, she had to face it. She couldn't keep running. The next day, Grace made the call to Mark Sullivan, the lawyer handling her family's affairs. Her decision was final. She wasn't returning to the company, but she would help find a way to transition out of her role. She explained her decision to him, her voice firm as she laid out her boundaries. "I'm not going back to being the CEO," she said, her words clear. "But I'll help you transition, help you find a solution. I can't keep running from it, but I'm not going to be the person you want me to be either." There was a long silence on the other end of the phone before Mark finally responded. "Understood," he said, his tone resigned. "We'll have to figure this out, Grace. It's going to take time, but we'll make it work." Hanging up the phone, Grace felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She had made her choice. She was no longer running, but she also wasn't going to be the person she had been before. She was carving her own path, and with Jack by her side, she knew she could handle whatever came next. That evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Grace and Jack sat together, watching the colors change across the sky. It was a simple moment, but for Grace, it was everything. She had found something here that she hadn't expected. A future, a purpose, and a man who accepted her for who she was, not for who she had been. As Jack took her hand, his eyes full of love and understanding, Grace realized that while the road ahead wouldn't be easy, she wasn't walking it alone. Together, they could face whatever challenges the future held. Grace had finally found the courage to confront her past, but it was this new life, the one she was building with Jack, that she was truly ready to fight for. ****, a struggling farmer finds an injured pilot in his field only to learn she's a millionaire. ***. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue where we left off. It had been several weeks since Grace had made her decision. She had let go of her role as CEO and had begun the process of helping transition the company into new hands. But the emotional toll of her past still lingered. Though she had found peace in the farm life, Grace couldn't shake the feeling that there was unfinished business waiting for her. Jack had been her rock through it all. But now it was time for her to face the final part of her journey. One quiet afternoon, as Grace and Jack were working together in the garden, the phone rang. Grace's heart skipped when she saw the name on the screen, Mark Sullivan, her family's lawyer. She hesitated, the weight of her decision still fresh in her mind. Jack noticed her hesitation and gave her a gentle smile. "It's okay, Grace. Take your time." Grace nodded, but as the phone rang again, she knew she couldn't avoid it any longer. She took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Mark." "Grace." Mark's voice was calm but firm. "We've made some progress on the transition, but there's something you need to know." Grace braced herself, her heart beating faster. "What is it?" Mark hesitated before speaking. "The board has voted to remove you officially as the CEO. It's done. The company will be handed over to a new management team, and you won't be involved moving forward." Grace felt a wave of relief wash over her, but it was quickly replaced by a deep sense of loss. It was over. She was finally free. But the freedom came at a cost. Her connection to her family's legacy, the business she had inherited, was now severed completely. "I see," Grace said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for letting me know," Mark continued, his tone softening. "Grace, I know this hasn't been easy for you, but you've made the right decision. It was time for a change. I'll make sure everything else is taken care of on our end. You don't need to worry." Grace couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. The weight of her past was lifting, but it still stung to think that she had lost so much. "Thank you, Mark," she said quietly before ending the call. She stood there for a moment, staring at the phone in her hand. Jack, sensing the change in her demeanor, walked over to her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it, Grace," he said softly. "You're free now. You can start over, truly." Grace looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of emotions. "It's over," she said. "I've let go of the company, and I know it was the right choice. But it still feels like a part of me is gone, like I've lost something important." Jack pulled her into a hug, holding her close as she took a deep breath. "You haven't lost anything, Grace," he said, his voice steady. "You've gained everything that matters. You've gained peace, you've gained a future, and you've gained a life that's truly yours. And that's what matters. Grace clung to him for a moment, her heart finally starting to calm. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she was ready to face it. With Jack by her side, she could handle anything. As the days passed, Grace continued to find new ways to contribute to the farm. She worked alongside Jack, learning more about the land, the animals, and the quiet rhythms of farm life. She had never imagined that she could find so much satisfaction in something so simple, and yet, there was a sense of fulfillment in it that she had never experienced in her previous life. One evening, as they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Grace turned to Jack. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice soft but sure. "I think I want to stay here, for good. This is where I belong, with you." Jack smiled, his heart swelling with love. "I was hoping you'd say that." Grace's heart fluttered, the weight of her past finally beginning to feel lighter. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't hiding from her mistakes. She was here, building something new, with someone who accepted her completely, flaws and all. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Grace felt like she had a say in it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Grace leaned into Jack, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. She had made it through the hardest part. Now it was time to embrace the future, one step at a time. Asterisk, asterisk. A struggling farmer finds an injured pilot in his field, only to learn she's a millionaire. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue where we left off. Weeks passed since Grace had made the difficult decision to leave her past behind. She and Jack had found a new rhythm, working together on the farm, living a life of simplicity and purpose. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments when Grace questioned her choices, but she knew she was finally where she was meant to be. The farm had become her home, and Jack had become her partner in ways she never expected. But as peaceful as their life had become, Grace knew her past was never truly far behind. It was there in the form of occasional phone calls, reminders of the world she had left behind. She tried to ignore it, to focus on the future she was building, but the weight of her family's expectations still lingered, especially after the conversation with Mark Sullivan. A decision was looming. Grace couldn't avoid it any longer. One chilly morning, as she and Jack were having coffee on the porch, Grace's phone rang again. She picked it up without thinking, already knowing who it was. It was Mark Sullivan. "Grace, I'm calling to inform you that the board has reached out again," he said, his voice steady. "They're requesting a meeting. They want to discuss the future of the company, and they still believe you're the only one who can save it." Grace clenched her jaw, the familiar pressure building inside her chest. "Mark, I've told you, I'm not going back to the company. I made my decision. Why can't they just accept it?" Mark's sigh came through the phone, heavy and resigned. "I understand your feelings, Grace, but the company's future is at stake. Without you, it's unclear what will happen. They want you back, and they're not going to let go easily." Grace's thoughts raced. It felt as though the life she had fought so hard to build was slipping away. Jack noticed the change in her expression and walked over to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Grace, what's going on?" he asked softly. She looked up at him, her heart heavy with frustration. "They won't leave me alone, Jack. The company is still pushing for my return. I can't keep ignoring it. They need me, and I don't know how to fix this." Jack sat down next to her, taking her hand in his. "You don't have to go back to that life, Grace. You've already made a new life here, one that matters. You found something real with the farm, with me. Don't let them pull you back into a world that doesn't define you anymore." Grace looked at Jack, his steady gaze giving her strength. She had spent so long trying to prove herself to others, to meet their expectations, that she had forgotten what really mattered. "I know you're right," she said quietly, "but it's hard to just walk away from everything I've built, even if it's all crumbling now." Jack smiled softly. "You don't have to fix it all, Grace. You can't carry all of it on your shoulders. You've already chosen your path, and I believe it's the right one. We'll face whatever comes next, together." Grace felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. He was right. She didn't have to fix everything. She had already made the hardest choice, leaving the company behind and starting fresh. She had chosen a life of peace, and that peace was worth fighting for. But she still had to face the reality of her past, to find a way to navigate this final chapter without losing everything she had worked for. The day of the meeting arrived, and Grace found herself standing at the edge of the past she had tried so hard to leave behind. The decision to attend wasn't easy, but she knew that she couldn't let the company's future dictate her own any longer. Jack drove her to the meeting, offering silent support as they made their way to the boardroom. As they walked into the sleek building, Grace felt the familiar weight of the corporate world pressing down on her. The polished floors, the sterile white walls, the air of authority that filled the room, it all felt like a life she no longer belonged to. The board members were already seated, their eyes turning to her as she walked in. They were waiting, expecting her to take charge once again. Grace stood at the head of the table, feeling the weight of their gazes on her. She took a deep breath and spoke, her voice steady. "I'm not here to take back the reins of this company," she said, her words clear and final. "I've made my decision. I'm stepping away for good, but I'll help you transition, help you find someone to lead, to take this company in a new direction. But I won't go back to being the person I was. That part of my life is over." The room was silent for a moment, the board members exchanging glances. Finally, one of them spoke, his voice filled with resignation. "We understand, Grace," he said, "but you've left us with no choice. We'll move forward without you." Grace nodded, a sense of finality settling over her. This was it. She had made her choice, and it was time to let go. As she left the meeting and walked out into the bright sunlight, Grace felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She had done what she needed to do. She had faced her past, and now it was time to move forward without the company, without the expectations, and without the person she used to be. With Jack by her side, she knew she was ready to embrace the future, no matter what it held. Asterisk, asterisk. A struggling farmer finds an injured pilot in his field, only to learn she's a millionaire. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue where we left off. The days after the meeting with the board were quiet. Grace had made peace with her decision, and Jack had been her unwavering support throughout it all. The finality of her choice to step away from the company had lifted a weight she didn't even realize she had been carrying. While the future was still uncertain, one thing was clear: she was where she belonged now, with Jack on the farm, building a life that was completely her own. She had spent so much time trying to escape her past, but now she had finally come to terms with it. Grace had realized that she didn't have to go back to the person she once was to find purpose. She had found purpose in the simple, quiet life on the farm, working with Jack, and contributing to something real and meaningful. As the weeks went by, Grace and Jack continued their work together, creating a rhythm in their everyday lives. They worked hard, side by side, and found joy in the small victories, the crops that grew, the animals that thrived, and the steady progress they made. Grace found herself more at peace with every passing day, and the farm had become a sanctuary for her, a place where she could truly be herself. One crisp evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills, Grace and Jack sat together on the porch, watching the sky turn a brilliant shade of orange. Grace had never felt such calm before, not even in her most successful days at the company. It was a quiet kind of peace, one she had always longed for, but never knew was possible. "I never thought I'd find this," Grace said softly, her eyes focused on the horizon. "This peace, this feeling of being exactly where I'm supposed to be." Jack smiled, his hand finding hers. "You've worked hard for it, Grace, and you've earned it." Grace looked at him, her heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You've been my strength, my constant." Jack's smile softened. "We're in this together. Always have been, always will be." As the evening sky deepened into twilight, Grace and Jack sat in comfortable silence, the weight of the world lifting off their shoulders with every passing moment. They had both made mistakes in the past, but they had learned from them and found something far more precious than success or wealth. They had found each other. Grace had learned that it wasn't about trying to fix everything in her past or making amends with the company. It was about moving forward, about creating a new life, and about allowing herself to truly heal. Jack had shown her that the most important things in life weren't titles or money, but the connections we make and the love we share. In the months that followed, Grace continued to find new ways to contribute to the farm. She used her knowledge of business to help streamline their operations, and together, they began planning for the future. There was still so much to be done, but they knew they could face it all together. Grace had become an integral part of the community, helping neighbors when they needed it, and giving back to the people who had supported them. She had found a new purpose, one that didn't require her to be anyone other than herself. One day, as the two of them worked on repairing the barn, Jack turned to Grace with a look of quiet admiration. "I'm proud of you," he said. "You've come a long way." Grace smiled softly, her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you." The bond between them had grown stronger than ever, and Grace knew that together they had created something far more valuable than anything she had ever known. They had built a life, a future, and a love that was true. There would always be challenges ahead, but Grace no longer feared them. She had faced her past, made peace with it, and now she was free to live the life she had always dreamed of, one that was her own. As they stood together, looking out over the farm, Grace felt a sense of accomplishment and peace settle over her. She had learned the most important lesson of all, that the journey toward happiness isn't always straightforward, but with love, support, and the courage to move forward, it was always worth it. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the fields. And in that moment, Grace knew that no matter what the future held, she had already found everything she needed. She had found herself, and she had found a love that was stronger than any obstacle they might face. The future was bright, and together, they would face it one step at a time. In this heartwarming story, Grace, a woman who once lived a life full of power and wealth, learns the true meaning of peace and purpose when she steps away from her family's crumbling business to build a new life on a farm with Jack, a humble and hardworking farmer. As Grace confronts her past and the responsibilities she left behind, she discovers that true happiness lies not in titles or wealth, but in love, hard work, and a fresh start. This journey of self-discovery is not just about escaping the past, but about embracing the future with courage and determination. Just like many inspiring millionaire stories, Grace's tale highlights the importance of making difficult decisions and choosing to live authentically. Throughout the story, Grace navigates through the complexities of her past and present, ultimately realizing that she doesn't need to return to her old life to find fulfillment. With the unwavering support of Jack, she learns that she can build a life she truly loves, one that is filled with peace, purpose, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. As Grace takes the final steps in her journey, she reflects on her own transformation, realizing that sometimes the most valuable millionaire stories are those of personal growth, love, and the courage to start anew. In the end, Grace's story is a testament to the power of second chances and the beauty of living a life driven by love rather than wealth. This is one of the many millionaire stories that remind us of what truly matters: love, purpose, and the courage to be who we are meant to be.